squat is a very good exercise, but a lot of people can have trouble with technique. It's a hard exercise technique-wise, and can't really go to failure because there's risk of injury in it more than other exercises. In this video, however, I'm gonna break the entire squat down into different steps so that you can learn how to perform the squat, how to train it as well, and not risk injury, and finding the right technique in the squat for you. So stay tuned. The squat can be split up into different parts. In this video, we're gonna talk about the warm-up, the setup, the walkout, the brace, the descent, and also the concentric phase, meaning how you go up with the squat. And all of these smaller parts, for example, the setup, can also be split into its different counterparts. And the setup is going to be foot width, it's going to be grip, it's also going to be bar placement on your back, and in the warm-up we get mobility, activation, and how to add weight on the bar. But we're gonna go into all of these parts one by one. So first off, we can start with the warm-up. And it's really important in the squat to always warm up, not only to prevent injury or perform good, but basically both and everything. If you want to get better technique, if you want to perform better and be stronger on the day, if you also want to not risk injury and build the right muscles, then you need to warm up properly. A warm-up, basically the most important thing is activation. Mostly for most people is going to be of the glutes. But a warm-up can differ from person to person depending on, for example, how you're built and what weaknesses that you have. But for most people, it's going to be some kind of hip mobility that can be consisting of few exercises. I'm showing you my warm-up, which is hip mobility that I do personally because I have a back injury, and if my hips are stiff, I can use the proper technique where I activate the sides of my glutes and then I have pain in my back. So I have to take that into consideration. I also do some mobility for my ankles because I actually have bad ankle mobility if I don't always work on it, also because I squat in flat shoes. I don't get a help of a heel to hip depth. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm doing every day, 2 times per day. I do 30 seconds, 3 rounds per leg of just trying to push my knee in front of my toe and just getting that kind of mobility for my ankles. And it just helped me stay in shape. But I do 3 or 4 exercises, 3 rounds of each, like 30 seconds per exercise, and just get my hips moving. Then I move into the glute activation. And why you want to do this is, for most people, the side glute and their abductors is mostly going to be asleep almost. And if you don't use your glutes in a squat, it's very common to start using either your hamstring, overloading your hamstrings, overloading your knees, or overloading your back and getting back pain, for example. So it can really help with activating the sides of your glutes. Now, for some people, if you have, like me, sometimes issues with your knee acting up, it can also be good to do some quadricep movement, for example, leg extension in the warm-up to activate. I do 3 exercises with a mini band, and I do a hip abduction, I do the peeing dog, and I do either a glute bridge or a 1-leg RDL or a clamshell for the last exercise, just to get the sides of my glutes, the gluteus minimus, and my abductors awake and activated for my squat. And this helps me perform. Now after that, you may wonder, okay, let's just get into the squat. However, an important key thing is you never just want to load up weight and go. You always want to gradually increase the weight of the bar, moving up to a weight that feels good on the day. So you can wake your body, get training on lighter weights on your technique, make sure you can keep that on heavier weights afterwards. So for example, for myself, if I'm gonna work up to a top single that feels good on the day, let's say 170 kilos, I'm probably gonna go empty bar, which is 20 kilos, 2 sets of 5 reps. 40 kilos, 5 reps, 55 kilos, 5 reps, 70 kilos, 3 reps, 90 kilos, 3 reps, 105 kilos, 3 reps, 120 kilos, 2 to 3 reps, 130 or 135 kilos, 1 or 2 reps, 140 or 145 kilos, 1 rep, 155 or 150 kilos, 1 rep, 160, 1 rep, and then 171 rep. This means I get a lot of warm-ups and a lot of time to really perfect my technique on the day, and I'm going to treat the bar itself as if it's 200 kilos, like it's the world on my back. Because that way I'm going to teach my nervous system the right way. So don't go into the bar and just go bouncing or being sloppy with your technique. Treat the bar as if it's a really heavy weight. That way you get a lot of training with technique. Another thing in the squat is always move up and try to feel for the day. In a squat, it's technique and form is so important that you never want to go to failure no more than like maybe 2 to 3 times per year. You want to always make sure you have more reps in the tank. So in the squat, always make sure you have maybe 1 or best case scenario 2 to 3 reps left in the tank, so that you always can maintain technique. Because in a bicep curl, you can go to failure. Like nothing crazy is gonna happen if you do a bicep curl with easy dumbbells and go to absolute failure. But if you go to failure and your form breaks down in a squat, for example, it's a way bigger risk for injury, which is why you want to make sure you always have reps left in the tank and don't go to failure. Always work with weights where you can keep the right technique and gradually expose your body to the technique. An important thing in the squat is how you squat depends on how your body is built. So the squat doesn't have a universal technique that works for everyone, and it's based on, for example, your torso length and your femur length. So if you have very long femurs, probably you're going to have sit way further back and have more forward lean in your upper body to hit depth. If you have short legs and a long torso, you're going to be very upright and you sit straight up and down basically. And if you're the same length, probably a combination of those two. So how you squat depends on your hip structure and your femur and torso length, which is why technique is not universal. I'm gonna show you in this video on every step a different ways to do everything so that you can try yourself and see which methods work best for me and my body. Best thing also is to have someone give you external feedback on your technique specifically and on your body specifically, because technique in squat is not universal. Some things are universal, like, for example, bracing. It's really important to brace, and also a hip hinge. Those two are really key things in the squat, but everything else is up for grabs. It depends on you and what you like to do. So, with that said, let's just go into the squat, all right? So, starting with the setup, we're gonna start with gripping the bar. There are different ways to grip the bar. What you can do is, first off, you want to grip as close as possible with the mobility that you have. So if you are a wider person and you have less mobility, you're probably going to grip wider all the way out to maybe your pointy finger or your pinky finger on the rings of the bar. However, if you're smaller and you have more mobility, you're probably going to be really tight on your grip, almost gripping all the way close into the blank side of the bar. So this depends on your mobility a little bit. So I recommend starting as tight as possible with your pointer finger on just the side of the blank side of the bar. And if you lift off the bar and you start feeling pain in your shoulders or feeling like your wrist hurts a lot, go in again, try to go a little bit wider, try again, try also different kinds of grip. And what I mean by that is having your thumb on the upside of the bar versus having your thumbs underneath the bar. I found for most people having the thumb on the upside of the bar, a monkey grip, is working better because you don't risk keeping the weight or holding the weight in your hands as much. And if you hold the weight in your hands, it's gonna feel really heavy. Your elbows and wrists are probably going to hurt. So you want the bar to lay on a shelf created by your back muscles on your back instead. So instead, you want to try different kinds, trying the thumb underneath, try the thumb on the upside, go a little bit wider and see where you can step. But start as tight as possible, because the tighter you can hold, the more likely you are to go and get a very good tension in your upper back, which is a key thing in the squat. You need tension in your upper back. So you will have to try around, but start close and tight and see, and then you start going wider until you feel comfortable. Now let's go into how to realize or how to decide where to put the bar on your back. So when you put the bar on your back, there's different definitions. You got a high bar squat and a low bar squat, but actually in this video, we're gonna throw the bar placement out of the window, because what's really important is finding a placement where you're feeling strong, you're feeling comfortable, and you can shift a lot of weight with a lot of tension. So you don't ever want the bar really on your neck, or that's a very common high bar squat, but you're probably not gonna get the best upper body tension. So we're gonna go a little bit lower on the traps at least, but then you can go really far down on your back, and you can also stay more upright. That depends on you. But you basically just want to grip the bar, and then you want to go very explosively inside the bar. So you want to hinge yourself into the bar once you go underneath it. This means you do not want to just go underneath the bar and stay outside and then place it on the back, because then you're probably going to find that the weight is gonna be very much laying in your hands or your elbows, which will cause pain. So hinge yourself into the bar and try to push yourself forward so that the bar go as far down as possible for you. This depends again on your mobility. For some, like me, I have like a mid-low bar. It's not super high, it's also not super low. For some, they will go really low, and for some people, it will go higher. You stop where it feels comfortable, as far down as you can, and stay where it feels comfortable. Now, this is not the ultimate bar placement, because actually you have to start getting into the steps of the walkout now. And once we finish the walkout, the bar is gonna roll into the best place for you where it will go naturally. So we're trying to find natural bar placement. So you just hinge yourself underneath the bar and get it as far down as possible. Another thing to do is try to think about the tips of your elbows and press them back behind you, almost like you're aiming for the tips of your elbows to touch each other, because that will cause you to get a lot of tension in your upper back. So you will feel really, really tight, and all your muscles will activate, which will be very, very good for you. So do that, make sure you're tight, and now let's get into the walkout, because that's the next step. So start with your non-dominant foot and place it straight underneath the bar. So don't go forward in front of the bar or behind the bar, just straight underneath the bar, straight under your shoulders pretty much. And then you also take the next foot, your dominant foot, and place it right next to your non-dominant foot. So your foot are close together and also straight underneath the bar. Once you've done this, we're gonna get into the brace. Now you want to push your ribs down towards your pelvis, and you also want to then use the Valsalva maneuver, meaning you breathe in air by sucking it through pursed lips, basically. So you go, and once you breathe in, you make sure that all of the air goes down, expanding your tummy. This means you do not want it to be one of these where you're taking air and your chest rises, because that's not what we want. You want all the air to go down into your tummy so that we can engage your core, and by pushing your ribs down, you engage your diaphragm more. So push your ribs down and breathe into your tummy. Once you've done that, you want to instead now you have a good brace, you have the bar on your back, you're very tight in your upper back. You want to shift back with your hips a little bit. An important thing here is you have to have the rack at the right height for you. So once you're underneath the bar right now, your knees should be, like you can see here, they should be bent and your hips should be too. If you're standing here with straight legs, you need to lower the rack, because otherwise you're gonna have to shrug the weight up or going up on your toes, and you're gonna lose all of the tension that we've just spent a lot of time talking about, and that's not a good thing. So make sure to go underneath the bar and really making sure the height is right for you, where you have knees bent, hips bent. And now you shift back on your heels a little bit so that your knees actually almost go straight and your hips are back. Keep the air that you've taken in, and now you push your hips forward while explosively locking out your knees at the same time. what will happen is you will automatically transfer into the midfoot and the bar will automatically move up from the rack. But it will feel really easy and explosively, meaning you didn't have to really like grind out or muscle out the weight off the rack, because we want to conserve as much energy as possible, and we also want to create as much tension as possible in the lift off so that you actually can use that in the squat. Because if you're going to stand with a lot of weight on your back, just all of a sudden and then create tension from that, it's going to be impossible. You have to create that tension before even going underneath the bar, which is why all of these steps are the most important and the first thing we're talking about in the squat as well. So you got the bar off the rack. Can you just walk out the bar and walk it out, take it for a walk and dance around? No. This is a common mistake that a lot of people take a lot of steps back and they rush it. They go really fast and then they dance around with their feet trying to find where to stand. Don't do this. Instead, what you want to do is you got the bar up from the rack. Now you very slowly want to take your non-dominant foot and take one step back. Now, once you've done that, you want to take your dominant foot, take one step back and place it right next to the other foot. So you don't want to take another step back, but you should just take one step. Now you've taken 2 steps, and if you're really good, you should be done here. You should not have to take any other step. You should be completely done. However, if you feel like your stance is too narrow, then you can take your non-dominant foot and take one step out to the side to get a little bit wider. How wide you're gonna stand is based upon you. For most people, it's gonna be hip width or shoulder width apart. However, you're gonna see some people that can stand really, really wide and some that stand really, really narrow. So you have to play around here and see what works best for you. For most people, you're going to have your toes angling slightly, pointing slightly out to the side, and the wider you're standing, the more angle or outward angle you're gonna have on your toes, and the narrower you are, the less outward angle you're gonna have on your foot. So if you're standing hip width apart, you're gonna have a slight angle on or outward angle on your toes. So you're finally out, can you just squat now? Not entirely. First of all, you may be a bit dizzy. You remember how we took in air before even lifting the bar off the rack? Now that got you really tight, but holding that for a long time can make you a little bit dizzy. But you don't want to just breathe out air fast, because then you're gonna lose all of that tension that we built. So what you want to do is once you walk the bar out, take a few out breaths like puffs. It's gonna sound like this. Something like that. This means you just press out a little bit of air, but while doing that, you will maintain the core, your engagement in your core and the tightness in your core will be intact, but you will be able to lose some of that dizziness so that you don't take in too much air. Once you've pressed out some air and puffed it out a little bit, you want to take a new breath of air by simply doing the same thing, pushing your ribs down towards your pelvis. Make sure that your entire body is upright and that your neck is neutral with your spine. And suck in air, again, the Valsalva maneuver, pursed lips, expand your tummy. Don't push your chest up, expand your tummy only. Now, can we squat? Not entirely. So you want to first, before you squat, just focus on your feet a little bit. Make sure you're very solid. Don't just stand in your shoes. Make sure that your foot is grounded into the floor. How you do this is thinking of the foot as having 4 corners. You have your pinky toe pressing into the floor, your big toe pressing into the floor, the outside of your heels pressing into the floor, the insides of your heels pressing into the floor. By thinking of the foot as having 4 corners, you're gonna feel a very, very different stability than you ever had before. And it's gonna help you track your knees the right way once you go down so that you don't feel unstable. And stability is a really key thing in the squat. And now we can start the descent of the movement. Now, you have to think a little bit about where you have the bar on your back. If the bar is very high, you're gonna squat very upright in your torso. If the bar is very low, you're gonna be more forward leaning. So the lower the bar is, the more forward lean you're going to have in order to hit depth. Now, there's 2 schools of thoughts on how to go down in a squat. And it's basically break at the hips first, by pushing your hips back without bending your knees, or pushing your hips back and breaking at the hips at the same time as you break at your knees and bend your knees. So you do it at the same time. Now, this is going to be what feels best for you, but one thing you never want to do, no matter who you are, is break at the knees first. Because if you break at the knees first, you're gonna find that because you're not sitting down, you will never hit the depth. It will feel like you're going really down and it will feel like you're hitting depth, but you will not be going deep enough. And it's also going to be less stable. You're more prone to losing your upper body and falling forward, getting the bar rolling up on your neck. You're gonna be less stable. So never break at the knees first. Always either break at the hips or the hips and the knees at the same time. Now, a common or like a guideline to this can be, if you have very long legs and long femurs, you're gonna want to break at the hips first and not the knees yet, because if you have long femurs, you're going to have to be more forward leaning and sit way further back with your hips in order to hit depth. However, if you have the same torso length as femur length, or if your torso is longer than your femurs, then you will basically be able to sit very just straight up and down instead. And so if you sit straight up and down, then you will have to break the hips and the knees at the same time. So try both of these things. A very important thing is when you hinge back and break at the hips, make sure your core is tight. And what you want to do is you do not want to, in any kind of way, you don't want to arch your lower back. You want to keep your lower back intact. And again as well, once you have the forward lean, so if you are a person that's going to squat, have the bar high and you're squatting very upright, your head should probably be looking straight ahead, because you want a neutral, your spine wants to be neutral. This means your neck also needs to be neutral. However, if you have the bar very low and you're gonna have a more of a forward lean, you're probably going to look way more down. So make sure that your neck is neutral with the rest of your back so that your spine is neutral as well. And this does not mean, because if you overarch or overlook too much up, you can overarch your back, and that's gonna cause you to lose your brace, and it can also cause you to feel pain. So break at the hips, make sure your feet are stable, thinking about the four corners, keeping your core intact. You break at the hips, you hinge back and sit back, almost like you're sitting back on a chair, as far back as you can. Make sure to also keep your upper back tight. Again, I talked before about pushing your elbows, the tips of your elbows back behind you, almost like they're touching. Keep that at all times, because then you will be very tight in your upper back. You sit back, and how deep you want to sit is, for most people, try to just go as far down as you can. If you're a powerlifter, you have to go with your hip joint below your knee joint if you're competing. If you're just a common gym goer, you're just squatting for fun and don't want to compete, then it's enough if your hip joint goes parallel with your knee joint. So you're parallel with the floor at least. You don't have to go lower than that. And so sit back as far back as possible, as far down as possible, and then you just sit the weight back up, right? For most people, yes, we just want to get the weight up after we reach the bottom, we just want to go up. However, a common mistake is the hips shooting up first, meaning your torso will then lean forward way too much, and this causes people to miss their lifts when the weight is heavy enough. So instead, what you want to do is just try to really focus on, once you get down and you hit the bottom, try to keep your chest, rise your chest, and making sure your upper back is really tight, so that you basically try to drive through your upper back and push your knees forward a little bit. Because this is a very good cue to just make sure your hips don't shoot back, because if you push yourself forward a little bit, not too much because you're gonna fall on your toes, then the hips won't shoot back. Because sometimes it's common to just go back on your heels a little bit too much in the bottom position, and that can cause the hips to shoot up. And it's not dangerous, it's just not an efficient way to lift the most amount of weight. However, if you have very long femurs and you're sitting back a lot, this is probably going to happen way more for you, because you're built in a different way. So once again, the squat is not universal. How you brace and the lift off, universal. How wide you grip the bar, not universal. How wide you stand, the angling or the outward angle of your toes, not universal. If you're going to break at the hips first or the hips and the knees at the same time, not universal, but going to depend on how you are. Not breaking at the knees first, That's universal. So this is the thing with the squat. But now you got the weight up and you can just go back in. Another thing to be that's very important to be aware of is once you get up from the squat, make sure you really engage your quads so that your knees are not bent, but they're locked out. And this is the same after you walked out the bar before you squat. Make sure you're upright. Don't just focus on the braids. Make sure to also focus on just tightening and engaging your quadriceps so you're locked out and standing straight in your hips as well. Because otherwise, if you're bent at the knees, you're gonna push a lot of weight on those knees and it can actually cause some knee pain. So I found that a lot of people that just focus on really engaging their quadriceps, locking out their knees, can actually be less prone to knee pain in the squat. And that's it for the squat. We walked through all of these different steps. Now, some common mistakes is going to failure, like I already talked about, breaking at the knees, or just thinking about going down on their heels too much when they go up, so hips shoot back, just taking the bar for a walk when walking out, dancing around, or having the rack too high so they have to go shrug the weight up or have to go up on their toes. Those are some common mistakes in the squat. But I hope this video helped you. I hope you got a lot from it. And again, it's really important to look at the squat from your perspective of your body. The best way to do that is getting feedback on your own technique and how your body is built and how you squat today. The squat, however, is a really good movement for everyone to do. I would argue everyone should squat because it's such a good movement. It's good for your bone health and you use your core a lot, so it's really good core training, and it's really good to learn how to do so that you can actually stay healthy for a long time. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions on the squat technique, anything you didn't understand, let me know in the comment box below. Otherwise, let me know what you thought. If you have any ideas for any other lifts that you want me to break down like this. And with that said, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you liked it, and I speak to you in the next video.